Go. Wow, that is something.
Hi guys, I'm going to give you an intro walk around to the 996 C4S that I picked up recently. I believe it's actually the cheapest 996 C4S manual in the country. I'm going to tell you how I got it so cheap, next to nothing. So it's 2002, it's done 118,000 miles. It's Arctic silver. It's one of the more common colours. There's also a polar silver, which is kind of a bit more bluish. So one of the main things about the C4S versus the C2 is the wide body at the back, which has got the same body as the turbo. So the rear arches are about 60mm wider than on the standard 911, and then obviously it's got the light bar on the back, which is unique to the C4S. It's the rear light same as a turbo, but obviously this bit is different, and that's what gives it the unique appearance at the back, which is why the C4S is generally more valued than a standard Carrera 2 or a Targa, for example. After the turbo, the GT3, GT2 and the 40th anniversary, the C4S is generally up there as being one of the more sought after versions. A lot of it's because of the styling, which you can see there. It looks pretty sick. Just got a more purposeful stance than the narrow body car. It sits 10mm lower, 60mm wider at the back, as I said before. It's got the turbo twist style wheels, but they're not turbo twist wheels because the turbo's got hollow spokes. Unfortunately, these are a bit heavier. We've got the turbo brakes though, 330mm front and rear, 4 piston calipers, so the brakes are really good, as you'll see on the test drive. But basically, I got this car. I didn't pay nothing for it. I traded it. I used to have a R129 SL500, which was pre-mint. I had the car for 2.5 years, but only drove it about 2,000 miles in that time because it was more of a garage queen, and obviously it was a bit more of a cruiser. So I drove a friend's 964 Carrera 4 supercharged, which had about 330 brake horsepower, and I just kind of fell in love with the Porsche driving experience. But I wanted an older sports car, an older Porsche, which was a smaller car, easier to enjoy on the road, which you'll see later on. The one thing I didn't like about the 964 was the ergonomics are pretty crap. If you've ever driven one, you'll notice that the pedals are extremely offset to one side. The switches are kind of all over the place, and the clutch is pretty awkward. So 996 is kind of the evolution from the old school analog Porsche to the newer Porsches, so it kind of sits in between. It's obviously the first water-cooled Porsche, so it's a good daily car. It's fairly reliable. Obviously there's some issues that we'll come on to in a minute, but it's just more comfortable and easier to drive fast. So yeah, if you go on the classifieds now, you won't find a manual 996 C4S under 20 grand. And basically I traded my SL500, which I only done 61,000 miles for this car, and I didn't pay a penny on top of that. That car you can get for anywhere from 10 to 15 grand depending on condition, whereas the 996's C4S's tend to go minimum, 20 grand, 25 grand, 30 grand, 35 grand for the minters. So this car has had a few owners. The bodywork's not too bad. It's got a little bit of bubbling on the arches, which is to be expected for its age, but it's not too bad. It's got a few small dents which are going to be sorted. The bodywork is thinner on the Porsches compared to the Mercs that I'm used to, so they do tend to pick up dents a little more easily. Just needs a bit of tidying up on the black trim, so we're going to get all that sorted. This one has a sports exhaust, 200 cell sports cats, Euro Cup GT rear silencer, so they do make a nice sound. I've had to get the front brake pipes and brake lines all replaced. I've changed the CV boots, the front strut mounts, and the bump stops on the front suspension, which wasn't too cheap. It's an old car, things are going to need doing. The dampers are going to need doing soon. Front wheels probably got some Bilsteins on there. It's common with rear engine cars that have the radiators at the front. For some reason they decided not to put a grill or nothing behind here, so the AC rads and your normal engine cooling rads can take a bit of a battering, so they're going to get replaced. I've polished up the headlights, so they look pretty decent for 20 years old. Because this is a C4S, the boot space is a bit smaller than on the two-wheel drive one, because you've got your viscous coupling under there and your front differential, so that obviously takes up a bit of space. It's got the CD changer in there, but obviously everyone knows with the 911s you've got the back seats, which is what makes them a good daily car. You know, you've got a 2+2, so you know, my son, I take my son to nursery in this, he loves it. I've took him on a long motorway trip, and you've got a ton of room in the rear parcel shelf. I could sit behind myself if I wanted to for a short trip, but obviously tall people are going to struggle in there. But tall drivers in the front of the car, you have no problem because you've got tons of headroom. It's easy to get in and out of. The leather's in quite a good shape for 20 years old. I've put some leather balm on there. It's got a little bit creased. Interior wise, obviously 996 interior is not amazing quality wise. The 903 had a better quality interior, but the ergonomics on the 996 are much better. Everything's kind of where you would expect to find it, such as the headlight switches, wipers, you know, stereo, climate control, etc. It's got single zone climate control. As you can see, the cup holder is not working, it's broken, but you know, that can be fixed. You just have to take that trim off. But other than that, the interior stood up pretty well. Probably going to change for a short shifter in there, so we'll remove the center console and change that at some point. Maybe put some Alcantara on here. The C4S has got Alcantara headlining, which you don't get on the standard Carrera, and it's got a leather dashboard, so instead of just having the plain black plastic even, you've got a bit of a nicer interior. This has got the standard sport seats. You can get more kind of bucket style seats with bigger bolstering. You can get nice coloured stitching in white and red, yellow dials, which some of my friends have, which look a bit more fancy, which would have been nice, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. You know, see more price saving stuff there. When you've got blank switches on the back, which would you have in the convertible, which obviously you don't need in the coupe. This being the C4S, is heavier obviously than the C2. It comes up at about 1500 kg, so it's about 125 kg heavier than the narrow body car. But even then, on the Nürburgring, it's still measured at 4 seconds faster than the Carrera 2, thanks to the better brakes and the more grip, better handling. But you know, when you're driving, you do need to keep it above 4,000 to get the best out of it. But you know, it's all good fun. Further plans for the car: it's going to tidy up the bodywork. Not going to respray it, just going to tidy up the arches a little bit. But other than that, you know, it's quite a tidy car body wise. I'm going to change the dampers, get some new radiators in there, do a short shift kit, maybe do a polycarbonate rear window to drop the weight a little bit. You can get fixed rear wings, which would be nice, because the rear deck lid is a bit heavy, which I've seen recently, but they're quite expensive to get. But yeah, it's a nice car. It's a good sports car. In my opinion, it's one of the best value sports cars for the money, especially one that you can use every day, and it's relatively reliable. Obviously with these, the M96 engine, you've got to be careful for bore score and IMS bearing problems. So with the higher mileage cars, if they've not had it IMS done, then usually you're okay. But you know, if you're going to get the clutch replaced, you might as well do the IMS at the same time. This has had a new Sachs clutch recently. They checked the IMS at the time, it was fine. It's had the rear main seal done. Bore score, which is where the cylinder bores become scored due to some kind of oil starvation issue. You'll notice that the car may smoke upon startup sometimes, that can be other things, but it can be a sign of bore score, and if car is using a lot of oil, unfortunately that would require a full engine rebuild, which can get costly. So this car has been bore scored twice, sorry, it's been bore scoped twice by Porsche Zuffenhausen, so it's got no bore score issues, so that's something I can be confident with. But yeah, I'll show you some more videos on the car later on, and then there'll be a test drive video for you to enjoy later on as well. Peace out.